The whiskey burned going down, but not as much as hearing Marcus call me practice girlfriend through the thin walls of his apartment bathroom. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'd come early to surprise him. Stupid. The key he'd given me last month felt heavy in my palm as I stood frozen in his hallway, listening to his college buddies laugh in the living room. Come on, man. She's been around for what, 8 months? That was Tyler, Marcus's former roommate. 9, Marcus corrected, and I could hear the shrug in his voice. Look, she's fine for now. Good company, easy on the eyes, but let's be real. I'm not bringing a public defender home to my parents' country club. My mom would have a stroke. More laughter. My hand tightened around the bottle of wine I'd brought, a Bordeaux I'd saved for a special occasion. Through the gap in the door, I could see Marcus leaning back on the leather couch I'd helped him pick out, his feet on the coffee table, completely relaxed. What's wrong with being a public defender? Asked someone I didn't recognize. New friend, probably from his firm. Nothing if you want to marry Broken Noble, Marcus said, and the sarcasm dripped like acid. Sophia makes what, 45 grand a year? I cleared that in bonuses last quarter alone. My parents didn't pay for Harvard Law, so I could date down. Dating down. The words hit like a physical blow. So what's the end game? Tyler again, always the instigator. I'll know her when I see her. Someone from a good family, connected, working at one of the top firms. Corporate law, maybe IP. Someone who gets the lifestyle. Marcus paused and I heard the clink of ice in glass. Sophia's sweet, don't get me wrong. She really believes in all that justice for the people garbage. It's almost cute. But she works in a basement office in the Bronx, defending criminals who can't even afford their own lawyers. That's not the woman I introduced to my father. Does she know she's temporary? The new voice sounded almost concerned. God, no. She thinks we're serious. Keeps leaving her stuff here, talking about next summer like we'll still be together. Marcus laughed, and it was a sound I'd heard 1,000 times before, but now it was different. Cruel. I'll let her down easy when the time comes. Maybe around the holidays. Clean break before the new year. 6 months. He was giving me 6 more months before discarding me like an unfavorable contract. I should have stormed in. Should have thrown the wine bottle at his perfectly styled head. Should have made a scene that his fancy friends would never forget. Instead, I did what a good attorney does. I gathered evidence. Slowly, carefully, I pulled out my phone and started recording. You're cold, Sterling, someone said with admiration. Ice cold. It's called being practical, Marcus always replied. Look, we all did it in college, right? Had the fun girlfriend before getting serious. Sophia's my fun girlfriend. She's got this whole passionate thing going on with her work. It's entertaining. But when I make partner in 2 years, I need someone who fits. Someone my colleagues' wives will actually want to have lunch with. What if she finds out? Tyler asked. She won't. Sophia's too busy saving the world one crackhead at a time to notice what's actually happening. Last week she worked until midnight on some case for a guy who robbed a convenience store. Pro bono, of course, because he had a sob story. That's who she is. Bleeding heart, naive, thinks everyone deserves a chance. Marcus's voice softened in a way that almost sounded fond, which somehow made it worse. It's actually one of the things I like about her. She's too trusting. Makes everything easy. My hands were shaking now, but I kept the phone steady. 4 minutes of recording. Evidence. Always collect evidence. Sterling, you're going straight to hell. Someone laughed. Probably. But I'll be rich when I get there. More laughter, more clinking of glasses. Now shut up. She'll be here soon. And remember, don't mention the Westfield case around her. If she knew I was defending those corporate assholes who dumped chemicals in the water supply, she'd lecture me for hours about moral responsibility. The Westfield case. Something clicked in my memory. I'd been following that case, reading every article. A manufacturing company had contaminated a residential area's water supply, causing dozens of illnesses, 3 deaths. And Marcus was defending them. He'd told me he was working on a routine corporate litigation matter. I'd believed him. I'd believed everything. Silently, I backed away from the door, down the hallway, and out of the apartment. The key I'd been so happy to receive 9 weeks ago went into my purse. I would return it, but not yet. Not until I'd decided exactly how to respond. The November air hit my face like a slap as I stepped onto the Manhattan street. Around me, the city moved at its usual frenetic pace. Taxis honking, people rushing to dinner dates and Broadway shows, the whole beautiful chaos of a Friday night. I stood there for a moment, letting the cold sink in, letting it freeze the tears that wanted to come. I'd been Sophia Chen for 28 years, daughter of immigrants who'd worked themselves to exhaustion so I could go to college. First in my family to get a graduate degree. Top 15% of my class at Columbia Law. I'd had offers from corporate firms, good offers, 6 figures right out of school. I'd turned them down because I actually believed in something. And Marcus Sterling, with his trust fund and his Harvard pedigree and his corner office at Morrison, Keller and Associates, thought I was dating down? My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Where are you? The guys are here." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. Sorry. Emergency at work. Client crisis. Have fun with your friends." 3 dots appeared then. Again? This is the 2nd Friday this month. My jaw clenched. He was right. I had canceled 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Rodriguez's son had been arrested on a weapons charge that I knew was bogus, and I'd spent the night preparing an emergency motion. I'd apologized to Marcus a dozen times. He'd said he understood. Now I knew what he'd really thought. Too busy saving crackheads. "I know. I'm sorry," I typed. "I'll make it up to you." "You better." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The emoji made my stomach turn. I pocketed the phone and started walking. I didn't have a destination in mind, just needed to move. My feet carried me south, toward the office. Of course. Even in crisis, even heartbroken and furious, I gravitated toward work. The Bronx Defender's office occupied the basement and 1st floor of a pre-war building that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the furniture was donated, and the coffee was terrible. But the people who worked there were some of the best attorneys I'd ever met. Brilliant, dedicated, running on passion and student loans, fighting an uphill battle against a system designed to grind down anyone without money. I badged in through the security door. Fridays after 6, the office was usually empty except for whoever had weekend arraignments. Tonight, I found Detective Sarah Martinez in the conference room, surrounded by file boxes and Chinese takeout containers. "Sophia?" She looked up, surprised. "Thought you had dinner with the boyfriend." Sarah was NYPD, but she was one of the good ones. 15 years in, disgusted by the corruption she saw, now working cases that actually mattered. She fed us information when she could, testified honestly even when it hurt the prosecution's case. We'd become friends over late nights and shared frustration with the system. "Change of plans," I said, dropping into a chair. "What are you working on?" She gestured at the chaos around her. "The Delgado case. Trials in 3 weeks, and the prosecutor just dumped another 1,000 pages of discovery on us. I'm trying to find the needle in this haystack." Miguel Delgado, 19 years old, arrested for armed robbery based on a witness identification that I knew was shaky at best. The case had been assigned to me 2 months ago, and everything about it stank. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong kid. But he was poor and brown and had a prior for marijuana possession, so the DA's office was pushing hard for a trial instead of dismissing the obvious mistake. "You find anything?" I asked, pulling a box toward me. "Maybe. There's a supplemental report buried in here from a Detective Chen, no relation, I assume, that puts someone matching the actual robber's description 3 blocks away around the same time. But it's incomplete. Like someone didn't want to follow up." I started flipping through files, grateful for the distraction. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. "Miss you." I turned it face down. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, too perceptive. "Fine." "Sophia." I looked up. Sarah was watching me with the expression of someone who'd seen everything, twice, and knew bullshit when she saw it. "He's cheating on you," she said flatly. "No." I paused. "Worse, he thinks I'm temporary." And then, because Sarah had that effect on people, because I was tired and hurt and angry, I told her everything, played her the recording, watched her face go from sympathetic to furious. "That privileged little—" She cut herself off, took a breath. "Sophia, you know what you have to do. Break up with him." "Well, yes, obviously, but I meant professionally." Sarah leaned forward. "Morrison, Keller and Associates. That's Marcus's firm." I nodded. "They're defending Westfield Industries. The water contamination case." "I know." "Did you know that we've been investigating possible evidence tampering in that case?" Sarah's eyes were intense now. "Nothing concrete yet, but there are rumors. Documents that went missing. Witnesses who suddenly changed their stories after visits from Morrison, Keller's investigators." My pulse quickened. That's a serious allegation. It's a serious case. 3 people dead, dozens sick, including children. But Westfield has money and Morrison, Keller has a reputation for winning at any cost. She pulled out a file. "I've been working with the plaintiff's attorneys on the criminal side. If even half of what we suspect is true, someone at that firm is going to jail." "You think Marcus is involved?" "I think he's a senior associate on the case. He'd have access." Sarah shrugged. "Maybe he's clean. Maybe he's just following orders. Or maybe he's exactly the kind of guy who thinks contaminating evidence is just smart strategy. Dating down. Practice girlfriend. Too trusting." "What do you need?" I asked quietly. Sarah studied me for a long moment. "You sure? This could get complicated." "What do you need?" She smiled, and it was the smile of a detective who just got a break in a case. "Information. Access. Someone on the inside who knows what to look for." She held up a hand before I could protest. "I'm not asking you to break attorney-client privilege or do anything illegal. But if you happen to be in Marcus Sterling's apartment, and you happen to notice something relevant to an ongoing investigation into corporate corruption and evidence tampering, well, citizens have a duty to report crimes." My mind was racing. Marcus's home office, the files he sometimes brought home, the phone calls he took in private. I'd never paid attention before, respecting his work confidentiality the same way he supposedly respected mine. But he'd called me naive, too trusting, said I made everything easy. "I need to think about this," I said. "Of course." Sarah pushed a card across the table. "That's my direct number. Call me anytime, day or night. And Sophia? Whatever you decide about helping with Westfield, dump the boyfriend. You deserve better than being someone's practice run." I left the office an hour later with a box of Delgado files and a head full of possibilities. The November wind had picked up, cutting through my coat. I stood on the corner, watching traffic flow past, and made a decision. I wasn't going to break up with Marcus Sterling. Not yet. I was going to be exactly what he thought I was. Naive, trusting, too busy saving the world to notice what he was doing. I was going to smile and nod and play the practice girlfriend while I figured out exactly who he was and what he was hiding. And then, when I had everything I needed, I was going to make him regret ever underestimating me. My phone rang. Marcus, probably wondering where I was when I was coming over. I let it ring 3 times before answering, pitching my voice to sound tired and apologetic. Hey, sorry, just leaving the office now. Client interview ran long. It's almost 10, Soph. He sounded irritated. The guys left an hour ago. I know, I'm so sorry. This case is just... It's always something with you. Now he sounded like he was trying to be patient, like I was a child who needed gentle correction. You know, you can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to prioritize. Prioritize him, he meant. Prioritize our relationship that he'd already decided had an expiration date. You're right, I said, making my voice small. I'll do better. I promise. It's okay, babe. I know you care about your work. His tone softened, magnanimous in his forgiveness. Listen, why don't you come over tomorrow? I'll cook dinner, we can watch a movie, have a quiet night in. That sounds perfect. Love you, Soph. The words I'd said back 100 times caught in my throat. He'd never meant them. This whole time I'd been a placeholder, a temporary amusement. Every I love you had been a lie. Love you too, I said, and ended the call. Then I pulled up the recording from earlier and played it again, listening to Marcus's voice. She's too trusting, makes everything easy. I saved the file, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and sent a copy to my personal email. Evidence secured. Then I texted Sarah. I'm in. Tell me what you need. Her response came immediately. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring your game face. I smiled for the first time all night. Marcus thought he was playing chess, moving pieces around the board while I sat oblivious. He had no idea that I'd been trained by the best. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges who'd seen every trick in the book. I'd spent 3 years learning to see through lies, to find the truth buried in layers of deception. And I'd spent 9 months with Marcus Sterling, watching him, learning his patterns, his tells, the way his eyes shifted when he was hiding something. He thought I was practice. He had no idea what kind of opponent he'd just created. The next morning, I woke up in my own apartment for the first time in weeks. I'd been slowly migrating to Marcus's place in Tribeca. He had more space, better amenities, a view of the river from his floor-to-ceiling windows. My studio in Washington Heights was cramped and old, with radiators that clanked and neighbors who fought loudly at 2 a.m. But it was mine. Paid for with my own money, decorated with furniture I'd saved up for, filled with books and case files and the life I'd built for myself. I made coffee in my battered French press and sat at my small kitchen table, reviewing the Delgado files. The supplemental report Sarah had mentioned was interesting. Detective Chen had noted a witness statement placing someone matching the robber's description. 6 feet tall, heavy build, sleeve tattoo, near a pawn shop 3 blocks from the crime scene. Miguel Delgado was 5'7", slim, no tattoos. But the report had never been followed up. The witness had never been interviewed again. And somehow, this crucial piece of exculpatory evidence had been buried under 1,000 pages of irrelevant police reports. I made notes, cross-referenced timestamps, started building the timeline that would prove Miguel couldn't have been in 2 places at once. This was what I was good at, finding the truth in the details, building a case fact by fact until the picture became clear. At noon, I showered and changed into what Marcus called my trying too hard outfit. A simple black dress and blazer, professional but not expensive. He'd once suggested I might want to invest in better pieces if I wanted to be taken seriously. I'd nodded and ignored him, knowing that my wardrobe choices had nothing to do with how seriously judges took my arguments. Before leaving, I stood in front of my mirror and practiced. The smile, the naive girlfriend expression, the trusting eyes of someone who believed her boyfriend when he said he was working late, who never questioned where he was or what he was doing. It was easier than I expected. I'd been playing this role for 9 months without knowing it. At 2 p.m. exactly, I walked into a coffee shop in Murray Hill. Sarah was already there, sitting in a back corner booth with another woman I didn't recognize. "Sophia Chen, meet Janet Morrison," Sarah said as I slid into the booth. My mind went blank for a second. Morrison. As in Morrison, Keller and Associates? Janet Morrison was in her early 60s, gray hair cut short, wearing an expensive suit that somehow looked comfortable. She extended her hand with a slight smile. "Not that Morrison," she said, reading my expression. "Though yes, my ex-husband founded the firm. We divorced 15 years ago, when I discovered he had more interest in billable hours than integrity." Janet's been investigating Morrison Keller for the past 2 years, Sarah explained. She's working with the State Attorney General's office on a RICO case. RICO. Racketeer. Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. They weren't just looking at evidence tampering, they were looking at systemic corruption. "I'm a paralegal," I said carefully. "I work in criminal defense. I'm not sure how I can help with a corporate case." "You're also Marcus Sterling's girlfriend," Janet said bluntly. "And before you ask how I know that, I've been watching Marcus Sterling for 6 months. He's sloppy when he thinks no one's paying attention. He's also ambitious, eager to prove himself. Exactly the kind of junior partner who might cut corners if he thought it would impress the senior partners." "You think he's involved in evidence tampering?" "I think Morrison Keller has been systematically destroying evidence, bribing witnesses, and obstructing justice for at least 5 years. The Westfield case is just the latest, but they're good, very good, at covering their tracks. Every time we get close, the trail goes cold. Witnesses recant, documents disappear. It's like fighting shadows." Janet leaned forward. "Then Detective Martinez told me about your situation, and I thought perhaps you might be interested in helping us." "Helping you investigate the firm where my boyfriend works? Helping us stop a pattern of corruption that's allowed companies to poison people, defraud investors, and destroy lives while facing no consequences." Janet's voice was steel now. "Morrison, Keller doesn't just defend bad people. They help them get away with crimes. And they're very, very good at it." I thought about Miguel Delgado, sitting in Rikers waiting for trial because he couldn't make bail. I thought about the families in Westfield, their children sick from contaminated water while Marcus's firm dragged out the case with motion after motion, delay after delay. I thought about all the cases I'd handled where money and power had won over truth and justice. "What would you need from me?" Janet pulled out a folder. "Information. We need to know how they're operating, who's giving orders, how they're communicating, and most importantly, we need evidence that will hold up in court." She paused. "I'm not asking you to steal documents or break into files. I'm asking you to pay attention, to notice things, to remember conversations. Can you do that?" Could I? Could I stay with Marcus, pretend to be his naive girlfriend, while secretly gathering evidence against his firm? "He called me his practice girlfriend," I said quietly. "He's planning to dump me after the holidays. He thinks I'm too poor, too idealistic, too beneath him to be permanent." I looked up, meeting Janet's eyes. "Yes, I can do that." Sarah grinned. "That's my girl." Janet nodded slowly. "Good. But I need you to understand something, Sophia. This is dangerous. Not physically. I don't think Marcus Sterling is violent. But professionally, personally. If he finds out what you're doing, there will be consequences. For your career, your reputation. Morrison. Keller has destroyed people for less." "I understand. Do you?" Janet's gaze was penetrating. "Because once you start down this path, there's no going back. You'll be a witness in a federal investigation. Your relationship with Marcus, everything he's said to you, it all becomes evidence. Your life will be examined under a microscope. and Marcus Sterling will do everything in his power to destroy you. He already thinks I'm nothing, I said. Might as well make him regret it. Janet smiled, and it was fierce. Then let's get started. For the next hour, they briefed me. The Westfield case was the focus, but it was connected to at least 4 other cases where Morrison, Keller had represented companies accused of environmental crimes, fraud, or negligence. In each case, key evidence had mysteriously vanished or been discredited. Witnesses had changed their stories, and the defendants had walked away with minimal consequences. Marcus is on the Westfield team, Janet explained. Junior associate, but with significant access. He reports directly to Thomas Keller, the senior partner handling the case. We know they're using a private investigation firm called Sentinel Security to intimidate witnesses, but we can't prove it. We need the connection. What kind of intimidation? I asked. The legal kind. Show up at someone's workplace, ask questions in front of their boss. Follow them home, make them nervous. Nothing overtly threatening, but enough to make people reconsider testifying. Sarah's expression was grim. We had 3 witnesses in the Westfield case suddenly refuse to cooperate. All 3 had visits from Sentinel. And you think Marcus knows about this? We think everyone on the team knows, but proving it is another matter. Janet pulled out several photographs. These are the senior partners. Thomas Keller is the head of the firm now. Richard Morrison, my ex, retired 5 years ago, but still consults. These 3, Catherine Yates, David Chen, no relation, and Marcus Sterling Sr. Wait, I interrupted. Marcus Sterling Sr.? Janet nodded. Marcus's father. He's been a partner at Morrison, Keller for 20 years. Started there right out of Harvard Law, like his son. The firm has a certain culture. Legacy hires. Old money. They take care of their own. And suddenly it all made sense. The comment about bringing someone home to his parents' country club. The casual dismissal of my career. Marcus didn't just work at Morrison Keller. He was Morrison Keller. It was his legacy, his birthright. He'd been groomed for this his entire life. And I was a public defender from Washington Heights whose parents owned a restaurant. Of course, I was temporary. His father must have been so disappointed when Marcus started dating me, I said, and I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Actually, Janet said carefully, we don't think Marcus Sr. knows about you. The words hung in the air. 9 months. 9 months of dating, and Marcus had never mentioned me to his father. Oh, was all I could manage. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're better than all of them put together. I know, I said, and I did, but it still hurt. So what's the plan? I asked, pushing the hurt aside. I could deal with my feelings later. Right now, I needed to focus. Slow and careful, Janet said. You're going to Marcus's apartment tonight, correct? Dinner and a movie. Very romantic. Good. Don't do anything unusual. Just be yourself, or rather, be who he thinks you are. But pay attention. If he takes calls, try to hear what's being said. If he works on his laptop, see what you can notice. If he mentions the Westfield case, remember the details. He told his friends not to mention Westfield around me, I said. Said I'd lecture him about moral responsibility. Then he probably won't bring it up himself. But people slip. They get comfortable, careless. And Marcus thinks you're too naive to understand anyway. Janet smiled coldly. Let him underestimate you. It's the best advantage you could have. We talked through scenarios, established communication protocols. I wouldn't wear a wire. Too risky, too illegal. But I could record conversations if they happened in public places. I could take photos of anything left out in the open. I could pay attention and remember and report back. One more thing, Sarah said as we were wrapping up. The Delgado case. That missing evidence report. I did some digging. The prosecutor who buried it. He used to work at Morrison Keller. Left 3 years ago to join the DA's office. So this goes beyond just the firm, I said. This goes everywhere. It's a system. People protecting people, favors and connections, and money changing hands where no one can see. Sarah's jaw was tight. And it's going to stop. I left the coffee shop with my head spinning and my phone full of new contacts. Janet Morrison's direct line. An FBI agent named Torres who was working the RICO case. A lawyer named Patricia Hernandez who represented the Westfield plaintiffs. I was now part of an investigation into one of New York's most prestigious law firms. I was going to spy on my boyfriend. I was going to collect evidence that could send people to prison. And I was going to dinner at Marcus Sterling's apartment in 4 hours. I walked through Central Park, needing air and space to think. Couples strolled past, holding hands, taking selfies with the fall leaves. I'd been one of them once, a month ago, maybe 2. Marcus had brought me here on a sunny afternoon, bought me hot chocolate from a vendor, kissed me under a tree. I'd thought it was romantic. Now I wondered if he'd been practicing, trying out the boyfriend role before the real thing came along. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Can't wait to see you tonight making your favorite pasta. The heart emoji felt like mockery, but I typed back, can't wait. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. Just myself. The practice girlfriend. The temporary distraction. The too trusting public defender who made everything easy. I could do this. I could smile and eat pasta and cuddle on the couch and pretend everything was fine. I'd been doing it for 9 months. What was a few more weeks? But first, I had work to do. I detoured to my office, pulled the Delgado files, and started making calls. The prosecutor who'd buried the evidence, Anthony Chen, no relation, had left Morrison, Keller under what public records called amicable circumstances. But people didn't leave prestigious firms for the DA's office unless something pushed them. I called in a favor from a friend at the courthouse, got Anthony Chen's phone number, and called before I could think better of it. Anthony Chen. Mr. Chen, my name is Sophia Chen. I'm a public defender working the Miguel Delgado case. I'm calling about a supplemental evidence report from 3 months ago. Silence on the other end. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Detective Chen's report, the one that describes a witness seeing someone matching the actual robber's description 3 blocks from where my client was arrested. The report that somehow never made it into discovery until 3 weeks before trial. More silence. I could hear him breathing. I have nothing to say to you, he said finally. Mr. Chen, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but my client is innocent. He's 19 years old and he's sitting in Rikers because someone decided this evidence wasn't important. I just need to know why. You want to know why? His voice was harsh now. Because that's how the system works. That's what I learned at Morrison Keller. Some cases matter and some don't. Some people matter and some don't. Your client? He doesn't matter, not to anyone who counts. He matters to me. Then you're going to lose a lot of cases. A pause. Look, I can't help you. I have my own career to think about. But if you're smart, you'll drop this. I can't drop it. He's innocent. Maybe he is, but is proving that worth making enemies of people you don't want as enemies? And then, softer, I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because I got out before it was too late. You should too. What happened to you at Morrison Keller? But he'd already hung up. I sat staring at my phone, my hand shaking slightly. Anthony Chen had sounded scared. Not angry, not dismissive, scared. What exactly was I getting into? My phone rang again. Sarah. You talked to Anthony Chen, she said without preamble. How did you... I've been monitoring his calls, part of the investigation. Sarah's voice was tight. What did he say? I told her. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Sophia, you need to be careful. Very careful. These people, I know, they're dangerous. No, you don't know. Not really. Morrison, Keller doesn't just ruin careers, they destroy lives. Anthony Chen left because they threatened to disbar him for something he didn't do unless he kept quiet about something he saw. He's been looking over his shoulder for 3 years. What did he see? We're not sure. He won't talk. But whatever it was enough to make a man with a Harvard law degree quit a $200,000 a year job and take a $60,000 position at the DA's office. Sarah's voice was intense. That's the kind of leverage they have. That's what they do to people. And I was about to walk into Marcus Sterling's apartment, smile and eat pasta and pretend to be his girlfriend while secretly collecting evidence against his firm. It's not too late to back out, Sarah said, reading my mind. You can walk away right now. No one would blame you. I thought about Marcus calling me his practice girlfriend. I thought about Miguel Delgado in a cell. I thought about the families in Westfield with sick children and poisoned water. I thought about every case I'd lost because the other side had better lawyers, more money, more connections. I'm not walking away, I said. Then watch your back. And Sophia? Don't trust anyone. Not even Marcus's friends. Especially not them. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the afternoon light fade. I should have been scared. I probably was scared, underneath the anger and determination. But mostly I felt clear-headed, focused. I'd spent 3 years fighting for people who'd been written off by the system. 3 years watching money and power win over truth and justice. 3 years losing cases I should have won because the deck was stacked against my clients. Now I had a chance to do something about it. To fight back not just for one client, but for everyone who'd been crushed by people like Marcus Sterling and his firm. I wasn't going to waste it. At 6 p.m., I took the subway to Tribeca. Marcus's building was all glass and steel, doormen in uniforms, lobby like a hotel. I rode the elevator to the 12th floor, used my key to let myself in. Hey, beautiful! Marcus appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron over his work clothes, looking domestic and charming. He pulled me into a kiss that I forced myself to return. Missed you? Missed you too, I said, and marveled at how easily the lies came. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Classical music played softly in the background. On the coffee table, I spotted Marcus's laptop, closed, but not put away. Wine? He offered, already pouring. Please. I followed him into the kitchen, watching him move confidently through the space. This was the Marcus his friends saw. Successful, charming, the perfect boyfriend. No one looking at us would guess he'd already decided I was temporary. How was work? He asked, stirring sauce. Long. The Delgado case is going to trial soon, and I'm still finding inconsistencies in the evidence. The robbery case? Armed robbery, but he didn't do it. I sipped wine. There's a witness report that was buried in discovery. Someone saw a man matching the actual robber's description 3 blocks away. Marcus made a sympathetic noise. That's the system for you. Prosecution isn't interested in truth, just convictions. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. But I nodded, playing my role. I know. It's just frustrating. That's why I don't do criminal law, Marcus said, turning back to the stove. Too much emotion, not enough logic. Corporate litigation is cleaner. It's about contracts and precedent, not trying to save people who probably don't want to be saved. My clients want to be saved, I said quietly. Sure, but are they worth saving? He said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I mean, your guy robbed a store, right? Whether it was this one or another one, guys like that always reoffend. You're just delaying the inevitable. My fingers tightened around my wine glass. He's 19. He has a scholarship offer to community college. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now his life is being destroyed. If you say so. Marcus plated the pasta, carried it to the small dining table by the window. But Soph, you can't save everyone. At some point, you have to accept that the system works more often than it doesn't. Does it? I met his eyes. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like people with money and good lawyers always win. And people without just don't. That's life, Marcus said with a shrug. Not fair, but that's how it's always been. It doesn't have to be. Baby. He reached across the table, took my hand. The gesture that once would have warmed me now felt calculated. This is what I love about you. Your optimism, your idealism. It's sweet. But you're going to burn yourself out trying to fix a system that doesn't want to be fixed. Maybe, but at least I'm trying. He smiled indulgently, the way you smile at a child who believes in Santa Claus. And that's what makes you special. Special. Temporary. Practice girlfriend. I smiled back and took another sip of wine. After dinner, we settled on the couch with a movie neither of us really watched. Marcus's phone kept buzzing with texts. He'd glance at the screen, frown, type quick responses. Work? I asked. Always. He sighed. This Westfield case is turning into a nightmare. The plaintiff's lawyers keep finding new people to testify, and we have to track them all down and prepare. Prepare what? Counter arguments. Discredit their testimony. Make sure the jury understands these aren't reliable witnesses. He said it matter-of-factly, like suppressing testimony was just another day at the office. What if they are reliable? Marcus laughed. Soph, they're claiming Westfield's factory made them sick, but these people live in a low-income area with a dozen other industrial sites nearby. How do you prove which company caused what? You can't. So it becomes a battle of experts, and our experts are better. Better at science or better at winning? Same thing, in court. He kissed my temple. You know that. Half of trial work is theater. I knew that. But there was a difference between presenting your case persuasively and lying. A difference between vigorous defense and destruction of truth. Do you ever worry you're defending the wrong side? I asked quietly. Marcus stiffened slightly. There's no wrong side. There's the client and the other side. My job is to represent my client to the best of my ability. Even if they're guilty? Everyone deserves a defense. You believe that, right? That's why you do what you do. I defend people who can't afford lawyers. People the system wants to crush. That's different from defending corporations who poison children. Is it? Marcus shifted away from me, his voice cooling. Westfield Industries employs 3,000 people. If they lose this case, they go bankrupt. 3,000 people lose their jobs. Is that justice? Is poisoning children justice? The poisoning is alleged, not proven. That's the whole point of the trial. He stood up abruptly. I don't want to fight about this, Sophia. You have your job, I have mine. Can we just leave it at that? I should have backed down. The naive girlfriend would have apologized for starting an argument. But something in his dismissive tone, his casual acceptance of defending the indefensible, pushed me further. You told your friends you don't want to bring a public defender home to your parents' country club, I said. The color drained from Marcus's face. For a second, just a second, his mask slipped, and I saw panic. What? Yesterday, when I came by early. You didn't know I was in the hallway. I stood up, facing him. I heard everything you said. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. I could see him thinking, calculating. Then his expression shifted to concern, apology. Sophia, I was just talking with the guys. I didn't mean. You called me your practice girlfriend, said I was temporary, said you'd let me down easy around the holidays. My voice was steady, controlled. Was any of it real, Marcus? Any of these 9 months? Of course it was real. He moved toward me, but I stepped back. Soph, I was just. It was guy talk, you know how it is. They were giving me crap about settling down, and I got defensive. I said stupid things I didn't mean. You said I was dating down, that your mom would have a stroke if you brought me home, that I'm too poor and naive to be permanent. I was drunk. I say dumb things when I'm drunk. You know that. He reached for my hands, but I pulled away. Baby, please. I love you. You have to know that. Everything I said last night was just me being an idiot with my friends. It didn't mean anything. The lies came so easily. And I could see it. If I hadn't heard the conviction in his voice last night, the casual cruelty, I might have believed him now. He was good at this. Convincing. Sincere. Prove it, I said. What? Prove you meant none of it. Introduce me to your father. Marcus's face went carefully blank. My father? He's a partner at your firm, right? I've never met him. 9 months and you've never once suggested I meet your parents. Introduce me, this weekend. It's not a good time. He's traveling for work and then next weekend, or the one after. If you really see a future with me, Marcus, I want to meet your family. I could see him thinking, trapped. If he refused, he proved I'd heard the truth. If he agreed, he'd have to bring his inappropriate public defender girlfriend home to face his parents' judgment. Okay, he said finally. You're right. It's time you met them. I'll set something up. I almost believed the smile he gave me. Almost. Thank you, I said, and let him pull me into a hug. Over his shoulder, I could see his laptop on the coffee table, his phone face down beside it, the briefcase he'd brought home from work sitting by the door. I had my foot in the door. Now I just had to be patient and careful and wait for him to slip up. I should go, I said, pulling back. Early morning tomorrow. Stay, Marcus urged. I'll drive you home early. I need to be sharp for this case. Miguel deserves my best. I kissed his cheek. Rain check? Relief flickered across his face before he hid it. Of course. Call me tomorrow? I will. I gathered my coat and bag, let him walk me to the door. He kissed me goodbye, told me again he loved me, promised to set up dinner with his parents. In the elevator, alone, I finally let myself breathe. I'd done it. Confronted him, challenged him, made him prove himself while secretly knowing he was lying. And instead of breaking up with me like he'd planned, he was now trapped into introducing me to his family. The doorman hailed me a cab. As it pulled away from the curb, I looked back at Marcus's building, all lit windows and expensive architecture. Then I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. I need you to tell me everything you know about Marcus Sterling Sr. 3 weeks later, I stood in Marcus Sterling's childhood home in Greenwich, Connecticut, holding a glass of wine I hadn't touched and listening to his mother explain why corporate law was the only respectable legal career. Public defense is admirable, of course, Catherine Sterling said, her smile not reaching her eyes. But one does wonder about the long-term prospects, financially speaking. Mom, Marcus said with forced lightness, not everyone measures success by their bank account. No, darling. Some people measure it by their win-loss record. Tell me, Sophia, what is your success rate? I smiled politely, playing the role Marcus expected. The system isn't designed for public defenders to win, Mrs. Sterling. But every client who doesn't go to prison unjustly is a success to me. How idealistic. She turned to Marcus. Your father's in his study. He wanted to speak with you about the Westfield case before dinner. Marcus excused himself, leaving me alone with his mother. Through the window, I could see their sprawling property, tennis courts, a pool, gardens that probably cost more to maintain than my annual salary. You're not what I expected, Catherine said once Marcus was gone. I'm sorry to disappoint. I didn't say disappointed. She studied me with sharp eyes. My son has dated many women. Models, lawyers from good families, a senator's daughter once. But you're the first one he's kept secret from us. He didn't tell you about me? Not until last week when he suddenly announced he was bringing you home. Catherine sipped her wine. That's unusual for Marcus. He's always been eager to show off his accomplishments. Unless... She paused meaningfully. Unless he wasn't sure you were an accomplishment worth showing. The cruelty was delivered with a smile, but it was still cruelty. I should have been hurt. The old Sophia, the one who'd believed Marcus loved her, would have been devastated. But I'd spent 3 weeks investigating Marcus Sterling and his firm. I'd met with Janet Morrison 4 times. I'd worn a wire to 2 dinners where Marcus had discussed case strategy with colleagues. I'd photographed documents he'd left carelessly on his desk. I'd watched him lie to clients, manipulate witnesses, and laugh about burying evidence. I knew exactly what kind of man he was, and what kind of family raised him. Perhaps he wasn't sure I'd meet your standards? I said quietly. Perhaps not. Catherine's smile widened. But you're here now. So tell me, Sophia, what are your intentions with my son? Before I could answer, Marcus's father appeared in the doorway. Marcus Sterling Sr. was an older version of his son. Same sharp features, same calculating eyes, same expensive suit worn like armor. Catherine, stop interrogating the girl. Marcus, you're needed in the study. His gaze landed on me, assessing. Miss Chen, I presume? Yes, sir. It's nice to meet you. Is it? He didn't smile. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. I followed him through the house, past oil paintings and antique furniture, into a wood-paneled study that smelled of leather and old money. Marcus Sr. closed the door behind us. My son tells me you're a public defender. Yes, sir. And you met when? 9 months ago, at a charity fundraiser. He nodded slowly, moving to the bar cart. Drink? No, thank you. Smart. Never drink when you're being evaluated. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. That's what this is, Miss Chen. An evaluation. My son has never brought a woman home who wasn't pre-approved by the family. The fact that he's doing so now is... concerning. I'm sorry to concern you. Are you? He turned, studying me. Or are you exactly where you want to be? My heart skipped, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure I understand. You're a public defender. Not a lucrative career, but it requires intelligence, strategy, the ability to read people. He sipped his scotch. You've been dating my son for 9 months. In that time, has he introduced you to anyone from his firm? No. Has he discussed his cases with you in any detail? Only generally. Has he told you about the Westfield case? The nature of our defense strategy? I hesitated, sensing a trap. He mentioned it's complex. Complex? Marcus Sr. laughed without humor. That's one word for it. Tell me, Miss Chen, why do you think my son suddenly decided to bring you home? After 9 months of keeping you separate from his professional life? I asked him to. Why? Because I overheard him telling his friends I was temporary, that I wasn't good enough to bring home. I let anger seep into my voice. Real anger, the kind any woman in my position would feel. I wanted him to prove I was wrong. Marcus Sr. nodded, as if I'd confirmed something. And now you're here, in our home, meeting the family. What do you want, Miss Chen? Really? I want to know if your son loves me, or if I'm wasting my time. Fair enough. He set down his glass. Let me save you some time. You're wasting it. My son is ambitious, Miss Chen. Brilliant, even. But he's not the marrying kind. Not yet. And when he does marry, it will be someone who advances his career, not someone who... He gestured vaguely. Detracts from it. Because I'm poor? Because you're a public defender who works in the Bronx defending criminals. Because your parents own a restaurant instead of a corporation. Because you represent everything Marcus has spent his life learning to defeat. His voice was cold now. You're a very nice girl, I'm sure. But you're not for my son. Go home, Miss Chen. Find someone appropriate for your station. Let Marcus move forward with his life. The dismissal was absolute. And in that moment, listening to this man casually destroy me because I wasn't rich enough, connected enough, good enough, I understood why Marcus had become who he was. He'd been raised to see people as assets or liabilities, to value money over integrity, status over love. Does Marcus know you're having this conversation with me? I asked. He'll know what I choose to tell him. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to discuss with my son. He opened the door. Feel free to show yourself out. Dinner won't be for another hour, and I suspect you'll want to leave before then. I should have left. Should have walked out with whatever dignity I had left, gone home, broken up with Marcus by text and moved on with my life. Instead, I said, I'll stay for dinner, thank you. I'd like to hear more about the Westfield case. Marcus Sr.'s expression went very still. I beg your pardon? The Westfield case, where Morrison, Keller is defending a corporation that poisoned dozens of people. I'm curious about your defense strategy. Purely professional interest, of course. That's privileged information. Of course. But surely you can discuss it generally? After all, I'm just a poor public defender. What harm could I do? For the first time, Marcus Sterling Sr. looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw recognition dawn. He wasn't a fool. He'd built a successful firm through decades of reading people, seeing threats, eliminating problems. And he saw a problem standing in his study. Who are you? He asked quietly. I'm the woman your son has been underestimating for 9 months. The one he called his practice girlfriend. The one who's too naive to notice what's happening around her. I smiled. Or at least, that's who he thinks I am. The door burst open. Marcus appeared, his face flushed with anger. Dad, what the hell? I leave for 10 minutes and you're... He stopped, seeing my expression. Sophia? Your father was just explaining that I'm not appropriate for the Sterling family. Too poor, too idealistic, not good enough. I turned to Marcus Sr. Did I miss anything? Marcus, get her out of here, his father said, his voice tight. Sophia, let's go outside and talk. Marcus started, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. I don't think so. See, I've spent the last 3 weeks learning very interesting things about Morrison, Keller, and Associates, about how you defend clients, about what you're willing to do to win. Marcus went pale. I don't know what you think you know. I know about Sentinel Security, the private investigators you use to intimidate witnesses. I know about the documents that mysteriously disappeared in the Westfield case. I know about the 3 former witnesses who suddenly refused to testify after visits from your firm's people. I met his eyes, and I know you knew about all of it. You're insane, Marcus said, but his voice shook. You have no proof? Actually, I do. See, you thought I was too trusting, too busy saving crackheads to notice that you brought work home, that you left your laptop open, that you took phone calls in front of me because you thought I was too naive to understand what I was hearing. I pulled out my phone. I've been recording you for 3 weeks, Marcus. Every conversation about Westfield, every mention of Sentinel, every casual discussion of evidence tampering and witness intimidation. That's illegal, Marcus Sr. snapped. Anything you recorded would be inadmissible. In a criminal trial, maybe. But I'm not a cop. I'm a private citizen who documented crimes I witnessed, and I handed everything over to the FBI 2 days ago. I looked at Marcus, saw the betrayal and fury in his eyes. You're right about one thing. I was too trusting. But I learned fast. Marcus lunged at me, but his father grabbed his arm. Stop. Don't make this worse. Worse? She's been spying on me. She's been gathering evidence for a federal investigation. Marcus Sr.'s voice was deadly calm now. Marcus, shut up. Don't say another word. And you... He turned to me. Get out of my house. Now. Gladly. Dinner reservations weren't that important anyway. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus. About that meeting next week, with Thomas Keller and the Westfield legal team. The FBI will be joining you. They have some questions about destroyed evidence. You might want to bring a lawyer. I left the study and walked through the perfect house with its perfect furniture and its family of vipers. Catherine Sterling watched me pass with narrowed eyes but said nothing. Outside, I breathed in the cold Connecticut air and pulled out my phone. Sarah answered on the first ring. How'd it go? They know. Marcus Sr. figured it out, and I couldn't keep playing the role. I told them everything. Sophia. I know, I was supposed to wait. But Sarah, you should have heard him. The way he dismissed me, like I was nothing. Like everyone who isn't rich and connected is nothing. I couldn't... My voice broke. I couldn't pretend anymore. It's okay. We have enough. More than enough. Sarah's voice was gentle. Did Marcus threaten you? Tried to. His father stopped him. Good. I'm sending a car to get you. Don't go home tonight. Stay at the safe house we discussed. You think he'll come after me? I think Morrison. Keller has a lot to lose, and you just became their biggest problem. Until we have them in custody, I don't want you taking chances. The safe house was a small apartment in Queens, protected by federal marshals and completely isolated from my normal life. I spent the next week there, watching the news coverage explode. The FBI raids on Morrison, Keller and Associates made headlines. 12 arrests, including Marcus Sterling, his father, and 3 senior partners. The charges were extensive: evidence tampering, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, conspiracy. And behind it all, a RICO case that would take down the entire firm. Janet Morrison appeared on CNN, triumphant. Morrison, Keller has operated above the law for too long. They believed their money and connections made them untouchable. Today, they learned differently. My phone blew up with messages, friends, colleagues, reporters wanting interviews. Marcus tried calling 17 times before his arrest. I didn't answer, but I did listen to the voicemail he left the night before the FBI came for him. Sophia, His voice cracked. I know you won't pick up. I know you hate me, but I need you to understand something. I never meant to hurt you. When I said those things to Tyler and the guys, I was just talking, just being an idiot. But somewhere along the way, a long pause. I actually fell for you. The real you, not the version I thought you were. And I think that scared me more than anything. Because you were right. About everything. About me, about my firm, about what we were doing. And instead of changing, instead of being better, I just kept going, kept lying, kept pretending you were temporary because that was easier than admitting I wasn't good enough for you. Another pause. I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved better than me. You always did. I deleted the message. It was probably a lie anyway. Marcus Sterling was good at lying. But sometimes, late at night in that safe house, I wondered if maybe that one time he'd told the truth. 6 months later, I stood in the Bronx courthouse, waiting for the Delgado verdict. The trial had been moved twice because of the Morrison, Keller scandal. Anthony Chen had been called to testify about the buried evidence report, and his testimony had opened doors to dozens of other cases where evidence had been mishandled. Miguel Delgado sat beside me at the defense table, 20 years old now, wearing a suit we'd borrowed for trial. His mother clutched rosary beads in the front row. The jury filed in. I watched their faces, trying to read the verdict before they spoke it. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of armed robbery in the first degree, how do you find? Not guilty. Miguel's mother sobbed. Miguel turned to me, tears streaming down his face, and I pulled him into a hug while the courtroom erupted in relief and celebration. You did it, he whispered. You saved me. You saved yourself. You told the truth and trusted the system. I pulled back, smiling through my own tears. Now go to college. Make something of yourself. Don't waste this second chance. I won't. I promise. Miss Chen, thank you. Thank you so much. I watched him reunite with his family, watched them leave the courthouse together, free. This was why I did this job. Not for money or status or fancy apartments in Tribeca, for moments like this, when justice actually worked. Counselor Chen? A voice behind me. I turned. A woman in a judge's robe stood there, younger than I expected, with kind eyes. I'm Judge Patricia Hernandez. I wanted to congratulate you on your victory today. That was excellent work. Thank you, Your Honor. I also wanted to thank you personally. I represented the Westfield plaintiffs in their case against the manufacturing company. Because of the evidence you helped uncover about Morrison, Keller's tactics, we were able to settle for full damages. 3 families finally got justice for their children. The Westfield case, Marcus's case, the one that had started everything. I'm glad I could help. More than help. You took down one of the most corrupt law firms in New York. You exposed a system of intimidation and evidence tampering that had been operating for years. She paused. You changed things, counselor. Really changed them. After she left, I stood alone in the courtroom, letting the weight of the last 6 months settle over me. The investigation, the trial prep, the media attention, Marcus and his father both facing federal charges. The firm dissolved, partners scattered, legacy destroyed. I'd won. Completely. Utterly won. So why did I feel so empty? My phone buzzed. Sarah. Drinks tonight. We're celebrating. You, me, Janet, and some surprises. The bar was in Midtown. Upscale but not pretentious. I found Sarah and Janet at a back table, along with Detective Chen, Patricia Hernandez, and 2 people I didn't recognize. Sophia Chen, meet James Torres and Michelle Park, FBI and State Attorney General's office respectively. We shook hands, exchanged pleasantries. Then Janet raised her glass. To Sophia Chen, who proved that courage and integrity beat money and corruption every single time. They toasted. I drank, feeling unreal. The Morrison, Keller case goes to trial in 3 months, Torres said. We'll need you to testify. It won't be pleasant. Their lawyers will come after you hard. I know. But you'll have us, Sarah added. All of us. You're not alone in this. And after? Janet said. After the trial, when this is all over, what will you do? I hadn't thought about it. Hadn't let myself think beyond the next testimony, the next deposition, the next battle. I suppose I'll go back to the Bronx, back to my cases. What if you didn't have to? Janet leaned forward. What if there was another option? She pulled out a folder. Inside was a proposal for a new organization, the Justice Accountability Project, a nonprofit dedicated to investigating corruption in law firms, protecting whistleblowers, and pursuing systemic reform. We need a director, Janet said. Someone who understands both sides. Someone who's proven they're willing to fight. Someone who's you, Sarah finished. Sophia, you could help hundreds of people, maybe thousands. Expose the firms and lawyers who think they're above the law. I stared at the proposal, my mind racing. Leave the public defender's office. Stop representing individual clients. It felt like abandoning everything I'd built. You could also go to law school. Judge Hernandez added quietly. The bench needs people like you. People who've fought in the trenches and understand what's really at stake. Or, Torres said, you could join the FBI, White-Collar Crimes Division. We need attorneys who know how these firms operate. So many options, so many paths forward, all of them opening because I'd refused to be Marcus Sterling's practice girlfriend, because I'd fought back. I need time to think, I said finally. Take all the time you need, Janet smiled. But remember, you changed the game, Sophia. Don't go back to playing by the old rules. That night, I walked through Manhattan alone, past the courthouse where I'd won Miguel's case, past the building where Morrison, Keller had once been, now empty, with a for lease sign in the window. Past Marcus's Tribeca apartment building, where someone else probably lived now. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Miss Chen? This is Marcus Sterling. I stopped walking. You're not supposed to contact me. That's a violation of... I know, I'm using my one phone call. I needed to tell you something. He paused. They're offering me a deal. Reduced charges if I testify against my father and the other partners. My lawyer says I should take it. You should. I know. But it means admitting everything. All of it. The evidence tampering, the witness intimidation. Admitting that I knew what we were doing was wrong and I did it anyway. His voice was raw. Admitting that you were right about me. I was right about you, Marcus. Yeah, you were. A long silence. I'm going to take the deal. Testify. Try to... I don't know. Make something right out of this mess. It won't change what I did. Won't fix anything. But maybe it's a start. Maybe it is. Sophia? I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. Sorry for lying, for using you, for being too much of a coward to be the man you deserved. He laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? I told my friends you were practice, but you were the real thing. The first real thing in my whole fake life. And I threw it away because I was too stupid to see what I had. Goodbye, Marcus. Goodbye, Sophia. And thank you for showing me what actual integrity looks like, even if I learned too late. I hung up and stood there on the street corner, watching the city move around me. Marcus would testify. The case would proceed. Justice, messy and imperfect, would run its course. And I would move forward. Not back to the Bronx, not yet. Maybe not ever. Because Janet was right. I'd change the game. Now I needed to decide how to play it. 3 months later, I stood in federal court, watching Marcus Sterling take the stand. He'd lost weight, the expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. His father sat at the defense table, refusing to look at his son. Marcus's testimony was devastating. He detailed years of corruption, named names, provided documentation. He admitted to personally destroying evidence in the Westfield case. He described how Sentinel Security had been paid to intimidate witnesses. He explained the firm's entire system of winning at any cost. When the prosecutor asked him why he'd participated, Marcus looked directly at his father. Because that's what I was taught to do. To win, no matter what. To see people as obstacles or assets, never as human beings. To value money over everything, truth, justice, basic decency. He paused. I was raised to be my father's son. And I was, until someone showed me what I'd become. By then, it was too late to change. But maybe it's not too late to tell the truth. The trial lasted 6 weeks. In the end, Marcus Sterling Sr. and 4 other partners were convicted on multiple federal charges. They would spend years in prison. Marcus himself received a reduced sentence, 3 years, eligible for parole in 18 months. As they led him away after sentencing, he looked at me one last time. I didn't look away. I'd destroyed the man I'd once loved, or thought I loved. I'd used him, betrayed him, sent him to prison, and I'd do it again without hesitation. Because some things mattered more than love. Truth mattered. Justice mattered. Making sure that powerful people couldn't crush the powerless. That mattered. 1 year later, I walked into my new office in Lower Manhattan. The Justice Accountability Project occupied the 10th floor of a building donated by a philanthropist who'd been destroyed by a corrupt law firm 20 years ago. We had a staff of 12, including 3 former prosecutors, 2 investigative journalists, and Sarah, who'd left the NYPD to be our director of investigations. My assistant looked up as I entered. "Your 9 o'clock is here, Director Chen. Conference room B." Director Chen. It still felt surreal. I grabbed coffee and headed to the conference room. Inside, a young woman waited, nervous hands twisting a tissue. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Sophia Chen. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for seeing me." Her voice shook. I didn't know where else to go. My brother was convicted of armed robbery 5 years ago, but I found evidence that his lawyer never filed. Evidence that would have proven he was innocent. I took it to the lawyer who represented him, and he told me there was nothing I could do. That the case was closed. "Tell me everything," I said, pulling out a legal pad. She did, and as she talked, I took notes, asked questions, started building the case in my mind. This was what I did now. Found the cases that others had given up on. Investigated the lawyers and firms that thought they were untouchable. Fought for people who'd been failed by the system. It was harder than public defense work. The cases were more complex, the opponents more powerful. But it was also more rewarding. Because I wasn't just defending one client at a time. I was changing the system itself. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Marcus Sterling released early on good behavior. Former attorney vows to dedicate life to reform. I stared at the notification for a long moment, then deleted it. Marcus Sterling had been my practice run too, I realized. Practice at trusting my instincts. Practice at fighting back. Practice at refusing to accept a world where money and power always won. I'd learned my lessons well. "Miss Rodriguez," I said, setting down my phone. "I think we can help your brother. Let me make some calls." She started crying, thanking me over and over. I let her, understanding what hope felt like when you'd been living without it. When she left, I stood at my office window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus Sterling was free, trying to rebuild a life. His friends from that night, Tyler and the others, had all found new jobs at smaller firms, their reputations damaged, but not destroyed. They'd learned nothing. But that was okay, because I'd learned everything. I'd learned that being underestimated was a weapon, that looking weak made people careless, that the naive public defender could take down an empire if she was smart enough, and angry enough, and determined enough. And I'd learned that some things were worth fighting for, even if it meant destroying the people you'd once cared about. My phone rang. "Sarah. Got a new case for you. Big firm downtown, pattern of harassment and discrimination. 3 associates willing to talk if we can protect them. Send me the files. I'll review them tonight." "You know you're kind of terrifying now, right? The firms are scared of you." "Good. They should be." I hung up and turned back to my desk, to the stack of cases waiting for my attention. Each one a story of corruption, abuse of power, injustice. Each one a chance to change something. Marcus had called me his practice girlfriend. Temporary. Not good enough. He'd been wrong about a lot of things, but he'd been right about one. I had been practice. Practice at being the person I was always meant to become. I opened the first file and got to work. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.